we take a single episode of a science fiction TV series and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. This is the Fusion Patrol Podcast. Welcome to the discussion. Hello, I'm Eugene.
And I'm David.
And we're Fusion Patrol! Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
not doing that again, no. Sorry. All right. Good evening. Welcome. And tonight we're going to be looking at Otherworld, that 1980s TV show we've talked about before. This time we're looking at episode 2, The Zone Troopers Build Men. I'm going to start out with a very, very brief summary. They've found themselves in the world of Tarka, a small town based on agriculture. They've created new identities for themselves, and they've settled in quite nicely. Except for Trace, who is going through teenage boy things. He likes girls, he likes sports, he doesn't like studying at school, and he's not doing well. He gets a D on his corn test, and corn is a required subject. And, as predicted, he gets a yellow notice. Turns out a yellow notice means you're drafted into the Zone Troopers for life. Oops, didn't see that one coming. He's hauled off to Triangula, the Zone Trooper boot camp, for 13 weeks of intensive training, and there is nothing his family can do to save him. He concocts a plan when he learns that the top 3 cadets can become officers, and only officers can resign from the Zone Troopers. He meets the Commandant, who is a one-handed man who has a mechanical hand that he lost battling for the Praetor. Trace impresses the Commandant first with his ability for rebellion, which he insists may get him killed, and later with his audacity and his prowess. At the end of the 13 weeks, Trace is elected to be in the officer corps, but his final graduation component is to kill a group of rebels. He doesn't kill them because, well, he's the hero, isn't he? And the family escape to go to another place and another world. Yeah, it's that kind of episode. So, David, how much did you like this episode?
It was partially enjoyable. I think after the setup of the first episode, it didn't really lead into where I expected it to go. But I do know from reading that production order and airing order are different, so I don't know how far into the series this was actually filmed.
Good point. This has got a different kid playing Smith.
Yes.
And I understand that the original Smith... So my understanding is that the pilot was actually 2 hours long, and then they cut it up into 2 pieces. And it sounds like... Well, it sounds like if it was 2 hours long, it was 2 different stories.
Yeah.
And so they decided to cut into 2 one-hour stories instead of having a disjointed 2-part pilot.
Not show them 2 weeks in a row.
And they didn't show them 2 weeks in a row. So we'll see new Smith for a while, and then eventually we'll come back to old Smith. And then, frankly, if you hadn't told me it was a different kid, I wouldn't have known, because he's
just as bad an actor.
He's the same kind of shaggy dog-looking kid from the 80s. He's got the same haircut, and it's that same one that the kid in Battlestar Galactica Boxy had, and it's the same haircut that the little kid in, I don't know, Walton's or Family Ties or whatever. I mean, it's that same mushroom haircut that every kid had back then, except for, Gary Coleman and different strokes, because it didn't work for him.
He probably only had 3 lines in the whole episode, so not much personality or anything else.
No, but that's usually the way it is when they hire a kid in the show. I thought, I liked the moral of this story, if indeed there was a moral, that if you screw up in school, you deserve to get sent into the military for the rest of your miserable, stupid life. But that could just be my personal biases, A, against being stupid in school, and B, against being stupid in school. So I enjoyed that part of it. I was rooting for the Zone Troopers to bust this kid's ass, to put it mildly. He deserved everything he got, the little smart ass. So I enjoyed that part of it.
With that, but I do feel that in the context of the show, since it seemed to be traced from what they were saying, he was there for a full semester. He had lockers warning him all the time. You'd think he would have learned what the yellow paper meant at some point during this whole time. I assume a semester is like our semesters, 4 or 5 months, and it's like You think he would have figured it out, seeing other kids getting taken out of school for bad grades at some point? And,
I don't know. Maybe he was just the worst in school. He didn't like corn.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, a lot of people were kind of like, what? You could get a yellow notice. And he's like, yeah, so what? A yellow notice on corn? So, yeah, there was a whole lot of that. Everybody knows this, and you didn't bother to learn the rules.
Yeah.
But live and learn. Bad grades send you off to the zone troopers.
But at the same time, as he did point out to his father, they could be leaving the next day. He doesn't know. That's probably why he had the attitude. He didn't care.
Yes, at one point, Dad gives him a bit of a chastisement after evening debriefing at the dinner table, which is about the most useless evening debriefing at a dinner table ever. But he chastises him for, wherever you are, son, when you're in school, you do your best. And Trace pulls that number about, oh, well, my life's on hold, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and which, was a stupid attitude. So, I mean, stupid is as stupid does, and Trace started this episode off quite a donkey's ass. So, and he gets hauled off into the troopers for it. But I don't understand that attitude. And I don't understand teenagers, so I suppose that, I don't know if that's an authentic teenage attitude. It wasn't my attitude as a teenager, so I had trouble empathizing with him. As you can probably tell from my opinion, I think he got what he deserved. And the only thing that I enjoyed, this is a pretty mundane episode. This is basically boot camp, right? I mean, the whole episode
becomes man and
goes to the boot camp. And the only thing that's good about it is that Trace acknowledges the fact that he screwed up. Yeah, it was his fault. Yeah. It was his mistake, and he had to fix it. And to do that, he had to excel at being a zone trooper trainee, a zone trooper in training. That's a zit for you, folks. And he had to excel at that and work his way up through so that he could get to be in the officers' corps, basically. So apparently there's no academy.
No.
You just go straight from boot camp straight to being an officer, which probably explains a lot about the officers, too, and the zone troopers. But I appreciated the fact, and this was the gist of the story, was that as the dad narrates their way out, I got to see my son become a man. And that we saw.
Yes.
And, he went from irresponsible twerp to not only did he excel at the zone trooper training, achieve his goal, but at the same time, in the end, when he was required to go out and kill people, which, if he had done it, then he would have been clean and smooth and not had to have a problem. But he couldn't do that. His compassion was still there, and he helped the people escape, which probably should have meant a death sentence for him, but didn't.
But that also led to his release, made it easier in the long run.
Yeah, I want to talk about that part. I didn't understand that too much. We also have the absolute most cliche ever in any boot camp film, and that's Porkbag, his friend who he meets on the first day, who's a big fat curly haired guy, and I'm not picking on him for being fat, but I mean that is the point behind he is overweight. They call him pork bags all the time. I think it's pork bags.
Sounds right.
And he can't do his push-ups because he's fat, and he can't get underneath the electric fence because he's fat, and he can't do the calisthenics right because he's fat, or the rope line, and they're constantly telling him he's fat. And of course, as with all these shows, he finally reaches a point where he just can't take it. He's like lying on the floor, cowering in, almost fetal position, and they come in and basically, they send him to prison for the rest of his life, which is what they do.
This is somebody who actually volunteered to join the zone troopers.
Yes, he volunteered, and he gets sent to prison for life because he doesn't do a good job at it. So, washing out of the zone troopers is not a good choice too. But maybe if you're in the maybe if you're in prison, maybe if you're in the top 3, you can become a warden, and then perhaps you can resign. I don't know. It's a strange. One
thing we never noticed in the training, though, because it was mentioned by Porkbag, is like other people that were put into the zone troopers. They were sexual deviants, frontal lobotomy patients.
What did he call them? TTs or something? Frontal lobotomies for sexual deviancy. Yeah, and they make great zits. Yeah. And according to Porkbag, whose name I never quite get. I thought at times they called him Rex, and at other times they called him Hilbert, and so that's why I'm sticking with pork bags, because that's a little more memorable. And then there was the guy who quit his job without getting permission, and he got put in the Zone Troopers for life. So it wasn't just a yellow notice.
No.
The Zone Troopers need people. And of course, if you recall the premise of the show, the different zones, well, not the zones, but the different, what do they call them? Provinces? They're not provinces. Is it provinces? Yeah. The different provinces are separated by the zone. Only Zone Troopers can go into the zone. So these are the guys that are the bullies. And of course, no story would be complete without turning out that our main villain, Kroll, is there to give the graduation awards at the end of the academy, just in time to meet up with our hero in his secret identity.
But of course,
you couldn't go without that one. Throughout the entire episode, we have the Commandant of Triangula, which is I wouldn't call it an academy, obviously. I guess it's just the boot camp.
Yes.
Is played by Mark Leonard, who many of you will know from his more famous roles in Planet of the Apes.
The TV series.
The TV series, that's right. Let's see, what other things might science fiction fans know?
Remember that Trek thing or something that was supposed to be popular?
Yeah. He was a Klingon in Star Trek The Motion Picture at the very beginning of the episode. And something else, too. Well, it'll come to me later. He is the Commandant. He's got this artificial hand, which he lost in the press, and it's a torch. And so he's given the introductory speech to the Zits. And he says, will one of you take my hand? The flames pouring out as a gesture of goodwill. And of course, Trey steps forward to grab it because he knows he's got to be an officer. He's got to be a number one guy. And the flame goes out. And so he gets his warning, only one other guy has ever done that. And he did it not because he was loyal, but because he was rebellious. It's like, ooh.
And I killed him.
And I killed him. Said, and I sensed that in you too. So I thought Mark Leonard played this part fairly well, except for one thing. I don't understand him.
Yeah, his character, did
not make any sense. It's like he basically tells Trace, I've got my eye on you, I'm probably going to kill you. Then he, later on, he catches Trace in a terrible crime of compassion, because basically they've come to haul off pork bags, and he stupidly, and to be fair, really stupidly, grabs the officer and says, no, leave him alone. It's like, yeah, you basically blew your officer candidacy right there. And the Commandant, accuses him of compassion, which is an ultimate crime, of weakness, and sends him off to be killed by a incredibly hokey electronic warrior fighting machine robot, which is basically a guy in a padded suit.
Something like that, yeah.
It's like kind of almost a fencing suit with, pads on it. It's hard to say. It's like maybe I think they took the old Triad outfits from Battlestar Galactica, put it over a bodysuit, kind of painted it down,
could have been.
Stuck it over his face, and Trace is able to defeat the killer warrior robot and, pretty much shows his defiance, which the Commandant has this sort of look on his face. I don't know what it is, though. Is it pride? Is he impressed?
Throughout the episode,
it's really hard to tell what his situation is with him, and then at the end of the episode, towards the end of the episode, there's one scene I love. That's the scene where he's in his office and he's asking for a recommendation. Trace comes to the Commandant, requests a meeting, goes to him and says, "I'd like your recommendation to join the officers' corps." And again, pretty bold of you, cadet, or whatever he calls him, trooper in training, to come and ask. You haven't even taken your tests yet to be asked for it. And he says, well, I need your recommendation if I do well on my tests. And he says, look at this cabinet. I have this cabinet full of hands. And he does. He has this glass cabinet filled with human hands. Said, each of these were taken from my enemies in battle. And you have to be able to kill people without compassion and, looking a man in his eyes and kill him. And the Commandant says to him, what would you do if I was going to kill you right now? And without blinking an eye, he turns around and he says, I would start a collection of hands, and the first one would be golden. because the mechanical hand is a golden hand, in case it was not obvious from my previous thing. And it's a great line.
Yes, it is.
It's a great line, but is that rebellion or is that, and again, I can't read Mark Leonard. I mean, he might as well be playing a Vulcan. Oh, that was it. He played a Vulcan. That's right. He played Spock's father in Star Trek. Now I remember. Just totally not giving it a lot of, emotion on this one. It's very hard to read the many moods of the Commandant. And, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how he came out of that. Was he impressed with his answer? Was he annoyed? Did he just
obviously there he was a killer, or maimer or something like that, because he does have the hands and we do see them. But like we were saying, at the end of the episode, and then he lets Trace just go, rips off his badges. And he's almost like sympathetic for him, and it's like, or maybe he relates to him somehow. I didn't get that. Like maybe he was more innocent, and it's like, wow, it's great to have a guy that's like this and has compassion.
I don't get it. I did not get the ending at all. Basically, they had to go up in these planes, these Vipers.
They call them the vampires.
Sorry, vampires, not Vipers. Galactica. Terms of the V planes, and they're little ultralights, which is kind of silly with electronic weapons. The technology in Otherworld is weird, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But in these vampires, they trained them to fly these things, and the three new officers, are sent to kill some rebels. And the first two guys are bombing the rebels, and Trace basically doesn't bomb the rebels and pretends like he's going after people who are escaping it, and then he's like shouting at him, "Go away, go away!" He doesn't kill them. And everybody gets really pissed, including the Commandant and Kroll and everybody watching. And the Commandant runs out to meet him at the field when he comes back. And he says, "You're a disgrace." He rips off his officers' badges. And you don't stand for anything that we stand for. Why did you come back? Surely you must know I'm going to kill you. And Trace says, "I came back because I'm not afraid to die." And the Commandant, who is now pointing a gun at him, says, "You're not afraid to die. Get out of my sight. I never want to see you again." Like a spurned lover or something. And leaves and lets him go. And I do not understand it at all. It's I just didn't get it.
I feel there'd be a follow-up afterwards with him, even with Kroll questioning, but nothing. I mean, he didn't get punished for letting the guy go. Nothing. It's like.
Well, I think he'll probably be killed. I mean, I think he'll go to prison or he'll be killed. Later, Kroll says, where is the traitor? And the Commandant says, "I let him go." And Kroll's like, "You." "We will talk of this again." And I just took that to mean, your career is over. Probably your life is over. But I never got the feeling that the Commandant was invested in Trace so much that he would give his life for Trace, which is clearly what he's done. Or it seems clearly that what he's done to me. So I don't know about that. So what else have we got in this episode? How much? There's boot camp.
We had the computers that the family went down into.
Right. Okay. So the family has used that access crystal, which is, as we talked about last time, they got Kroll's access crystal a long time ago. And Kroll is such a high ranking. In fact, we learned that Kroll is one of the highest decorated officers. He's in the Hall of Heroes or something for his
infiltration wars.
And so he's a famous warrior and decorated war hero. Most of the others are all sacrificed their lives, and Kroll managed to somehow get out of it alive. And so they've got his crystal. Well, that was a setup from the first episode. And according to, there's a little narration when they start the episode. It says, we're here in Tarka now, and we've used the crystal to create a fake identity. So, he's an engineer, mom's a vet, the kids are in school, and, it's a quiet life in a small town, and everything's great and wonderful, and we can just kind of poke around. But, again, it's like, why can't they track every time Kroll's crystal is used?
Yeah, you would think so. Because
later in the episode, when they're trying to... And basically, the family are useless in this episode. I mean, their parts are in there just to, I'm worried about Trace, and, oh, you can't do that, Trace, and, oh, what are we going to do about Trace?
We're proud of you, Trace.
Yeah.
Hurrah, hurrah.
you're a stupid kid, Trace. You need to get your grades up. I mean, it's basically that stuff. And they go to an information depot at night, and they break in using the crystal. And the computer's like, well, welcome, Commander Kroll. How can I help you? And it doesn't have voice ident because the dad can just say, oh, I'm here on a secret mission and I need one of your computers. And, they're locked down. What can you do? Oh, okay, hold on. Click. Computer unlocks it for him. And he takes the computer. And the last thing he does is he walks out. He says, no, I want you to forget that I was here completely. Okay, I'll forget you were here. And they leave. Now, if it's that easy with an all-access pass, they then take the computer home. And they hook it up at home, and they're using it to read the instructions about being a zone trooper.
Yeah, how to get Trace out of there.
And they're trying to find stuff, how to get him out of the zone troopers. And Mom says, or Dad's reading it, and he says, well, there's nothing in here. There's no medical discharges, not even for deaths in family. I mean, there's nothing. There's no way out of the zone troopers. And Mom says, well, what about transferring him to a different camp? Which I'm not sure why that would...
Yeah, why is that more important?
Why is that something she'd think was a good idea, right? Unless maybe they're thinking, while transferring him, maybe they could spring him or something. I don't know. But so he starts typing in a search, transferring to a different camp, and it pops up, oh, I need your crystal. And he puts the crystal in, and in the second it puts the crystal in, it starts going, doing a location fix for the permanent record to identify the utilization of the location. He was like, and he yanks the crystal out, and he's, they almost got us. It's like, why for that?
Yeah, that made no sense whatsoever.
Obviously, the crystals can geolocate, and they obviously know it's Kroll because they keep saying it's Kroll. Yeah. And I still wonder why they haven't revoked the crystal from the computer systems or, put out a general or reduced its function. Very, very poor understanding of computers in this show.
But it is an alien land, too, in comparison to us, so... Of course, they did have holograms, so...
They're more advanced than us. Yeah, that's the thing. They've got the holograms in classrooms where they put up the big hologram of the corn for the test, and the corn test. And and they also have the nucleonic delousing device where when they go in, they're deloused by some sort of radiation device. They've got the automatic butt sticker injection device,
which doesn't seem to clean between persons.
Yeah, it's like a needle on the end of an arm that kind of comes up and goes down. Like
drop your trousers,
bend over, and it sticks a needle in your butt, and then the next guy gets the same needle. It's real. I mean, maybe we didn't see that it like leaves the needle behind and it grows a new one or something. But again, the vans are ordinary Earth vans, but then they're like got funny windows on them to make them look alien. And then I don't think they have planes.
No, just, the
little ultralights are it, I think. I don't think they have jet. And I guess it makes sense. If you can't fly over the zones, then they probably wouldn't allow them.
No.
So that could be why. You can't travel between zones. Nobody can. So maybe that almost makes sense. But it's just, we've been told that part of the idea behind this show was to do Lost in Space without having to go to alien worlds and create whole new technologies and sets and stuff. And so they've done a really good job of just basically redressing modern stuff.
Yeah.
Except for the injection thing, which I think was a vacuum tube and a little plywood arm, something like that. But it was good. It was a light episode. It's about the best I can say. Yeah. It's like,
it was more. It was focused on the son. It was focused on Trace. I'm sure a future episode will be focused on the daughter. We'll go through all the family members.
I'm sure, and I'm concerned that they have not done. They've not grown. In other words, what I liked is that the boy grew.
Yes,
but I'm willing to bet that in the next episode, he probably will have undone his zone trooper. Training.
He'll be back in school in the new province and just have the same attitude.
Might not be as bad, but I mean, let's face it, he's been trained in their military now to the point where they would make him an officer. He should be a lot more effective at fighting the bad guys, understanding how the bad guys work, infiltrating the bad guys. I mean,
he might have learned a computer system, so who knows what the zone troopers actually know. He might have learned all the secret passages, how to get out of town, where to go, how to get to the provinces. If that's all stuff that zone troopers are allowed to do. We don't know. I mean, it was 13 weeks he was there.
It was 13 weeks. What I don't like is the officer thing. I mean, okay, 13 weeks you go through boot camp, and at the end of boot camp, you're either an officer or you're a grunt for life.
A follower, yeah.
And say what you will about the military, no matter what your attitude may be, usually the officers have a better education than... You don't just weed the grunts out and say, officer, not officer. You say officer material and then send them off for
training.
Actual useful, rather than just make them officers and say, okay, well, you're a boss now, which he can now resign, which, okay, fine. But usually after you've invested all that extra training for an officer, which they haven't here, you want to get your investment back. You can resign after 10 years or something. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it gives them the MacGuffin. It's not a great episode of a TV show. I mean, if they don't do better than this, I'm anticipating this show's going to be canceled in just a few weeks. That'd be my guess.
One thing I did like the fact is that it was a passage of time. May not have necessarily felt it with the way the directing and the filming, but I mean, it was stated that he was in school for a semester. Then he had another full 13 weeks of training. And we started from when he went into training to when he graduated. And I mean, that's 9 months of the year right there.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we don't know how far into the semester he was at school.
But even with the 13 weeks on top of that, and he'd already had 10 warnings before he got the yellow paper. Who knows how often the warnings come? That could be every couple weeks. So,
yeah.
But it wasn't like, they're in the town and 2 days later or 1 day later we get out, like a lot of shows do. I mean, it was a passage of time. Yeah, their life. And you have to wonder what is their goal? Yeah. I mean, I know they're trying to get to EMAR. Yeah, so why so they wanted a break and they wanted some boredom, just relaxing, but what is relaxing? Is that 2 weeks or do you need a year to do this? I mean,
or do you just settle?
Yeah.
I mean, do you just settle? I mean, what is I don't mean to dismiss the desire to get home and back to your friends but there are circumstances in people's lives where they're uprooted and sent to another place for whatever reason, job or practicality or whatever reason, and you just start your life over again. And it looked like Dad got a job as an engineer, Mom got a job as a dental technician, the kids are in school. And they got completely new identities. It kind of almost sounds like maybe we're done here.
Yeah, exactly.
At some point, you just kind of say, well, this is life, and it's better than being on the run. And I don't know, unless they're just worried that Kroll would catch them suddenly, and then how would that? I think that was we made fun of the debriefing earlier. Every night at dinner, apparently, they have a daily debrief. And that's basically Dad saying, did you see anything today? No. Did you see anything today? No. Did you see anything today? No. What about you, Trace? Did you see anything today? No. Like, I'm thinking, I could be totally wrong, but I'm thinking that if I saw something, that would be like the first thing I said when I came home. Hey, Dad, I saw something today. Exactly. Not wait for dinner and then have everybody like, I
don't want to do this. This debriefing is
so boring. I know it took.
Part came up. Yeah,
it took all of a minute to go through everybody and go, no, nothing, and that it took more time for the daughter and the little boy to complain about the debriefing and the fact that the world they're in is boring than they did the actual debriefing, which was Does the show insult your intelligence?
Not really. I don't think it does.
It's not a great story, but I didn't quite feel like they were.
No.
And the other thing I thought was interesting, which comes to mind, is one, there's an awful lot of we gotta pray and God stuff in the episode. So the family is really kind of playing off that angle. I noticed that, and this is one of the episodes I understand that they got in trouble with the censors on CBS because was CBS, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
In it, they talk about the Church of the Artificial Intelligence.
Yes.
Which is apparently the one true religion of Otherworld, because they talk about how one of those illustrious heroes sacrificed his life so that the people in the province could worship at the Church of Artificial Intelligence. And it basically says, worship the one true God or whatever it is, something to that effect. And it's a throwaway line, and it really is a throwaway line. And talking about the Church of the Artificial Intelligence is a throwaway line. I mean, we've talked about it more than they did in the show, but apparently the censors did not like it at all, which I thought was very interesting. That's really is a throwback. I would have thought that was a throwback to the 50s, not the 80s. So I guess that just shows us how far we've come, or not, as the case may be. Well, come to think of it, it was the 80s. That was Ronald Reagan and the whole moral majority nonsense, and so maybe they were being a little extra cautious, perhaps overly cautious.
70s TV was still, I think, was allowing you to do a little more stuff on TV, and then the 80s, kind of when the PC police came in and everything else started getting sanitized.
It could be.
So they had to be really, really careful on everything they did.
I mean, can you imagine if they had trouble with a line of, defending the Church of the Artificial Intelligence
on a
science fiction show on another planet? Can you imagine how much trouble they would have had with all the Lords of Cobol stuff from Battlestar Galactica? I mean, I know it's Mormonism, but I mean, that was relatively heavy on religion in a way. I mean, they were quite religious in their practices, and the Lords of Cobol and the aliens, which were angels, and Count Ebly was and all that stuff. It's like, and that was far more, I don't know, blasphemous, whatever word you want to use for it. But it was certainly, and this was just like trivial comment. And
one passing sentence, you wouldn't even notice it for the most part.
Yeah, I unbelievable. At least they got to keep it in.
Yeah,
I guess they got to fight it for it. What else have we got on this exciting episode of Otherworld? I haven't got anything. I've got no other notes on it. I mean, that's really all the stuff that there was to talk about, because it is, like I said, it is a boot camp episode, and you know how boot camp shows are. It's like if you took the movie, what was it, Stripes?
Stripes, yeah.
And you cut out the boot camp part, the film would be about 20 minutes long. Just the training and running around and doing this, that, and the other. There's not a whole lot to it.
It's a typical soldier story. Here's the running, here's the push-up, so here's the failure, here's the climbing under the barbed wire type of thing. It's like,
except in Otherworld, everything's electrified. Excellent. Kind of like a Tough Mudder competition for them. Well, in that case, I think we are done with Otherworld Episode 2, The Zone Troopers Build Men. An interesting title. We'll be back with another episode of Otherworld in the near future. David will be joining me for that.
Yes, I will.
And thank you for joining me tonight.
Not a problem.
And we hope you'll all join us again next time on Fusion Patrol. Fusion Patrol is a Lone Locust production. Like us, leave us a review on iTunes. Or stop by and visit at our website, fusionpatrol.com. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. Search for Fusion Patrol. Or just drop us a note at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. Our music is Fight the Future by Amber Wolf.